today. Welcome to another episode of Suddenly Single. And I've got with me public speaker, author, currently writing her second book, and fellow podcaster of Open, Emma Campbell. And she's also known on Instagram by at least 66,000 of you as Limitless M.
I just wanna get out of here.
So Emma, hello, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm delighted that you've come in and agreed to do this.
Me too, thank you.
Now, I'm just going to go back a bit because you were diagnosed with cancer, weren't you, in 2010? You were 39, the mum of 4 little children, and you've now been living with secondary breast cancer for 11 years. Yeah. And I would say you're an inspiration at facing what must be one of the toughest challenges. 4 children, 3 of them you weren't expecting to have 3. No. You had IVF in a 2-bedroom flat. The strain of that on any relationship would be a lot. Yeah. And it did break you.
If I look back to that time, I find it difficult to look at photos of that time because I look at the beautiful babies, toddlers, 3, 4-year-olds and Jake, and I think, where was I? You know, I was there, maybe with my hair growing back with a pixie cut, smiling, looking well or not. But where was I really? Because inside it was so hard to be present. It's so hard to be present when every thought is dominated by anxiety and the fear of death or, living in survival mode. So as a parent, as a mum, a mum of 4, my triplets are now 15, Jake's is 22. And I still tend to fall into I've got a sense of pride at how far we've come and how I've held things together and how amazing the kids are. But it doesn't take much I think it's just very hard not to think, but to focus on what I haven't been able to do for them or where I haven't been able to be present So again, I'm on a, I don't want to sound too corny, but I guess my current sort of intention is to I'm just being a lot kinder to myself. I think I'm doing my best. I am really proud of where I'm at now, where we are at as a family of 5. But I guess my nature is my nature, and I know I'm not alone with that, but I'm getting there. But,
I think it's also one of the few positives of age is that you do become more confident in yourself. Yeah, and so you're now 50?
54.
Are you 54? Right, okay. So I think naturally you learn to accept it is what it is and we are who we are. But you did, after your marriage broke up, after you split from your partner, you did meet somebody else. It's that saying, isn't it? When you're not looking, they find you.
I did, and it was, to me, a wonderful love story. We actually met in person the day after I was told that my cancer had returned. So it was a very kind of, I always describe it as like a sliding doors moment. To me, it was like the worst had happened.
Yeah, and the best.
And that's another thing as well. It was like, longing for a second baby, having 3, a miracle, and then suddenly finding out I was ill. And then it was suddenly, the cancer's back. Oh, but I've now... these kind of opposites, these huge life events, positive and negative. But no, I met my ex-husband and it was a love story. It was a very unexpected meeting. We met face to face for the first time the day after I was diagnosed, and we were sort of together from that moment. And it was a wonderful addition to my life, and very sad that that ended. But I did. It felt like a miracle. It did feel, because again, and it's an awful narrative, and I don't feel like that now, and I'm really proud not to be in that place. But the me of then was, well, who would, the cruelty of having connected with someone and then being told that your cancer's come back, which then puts you in that category of, I don't use words like incurable, or I choose not to use those words, but knowing that I'd be a patient for life, to then be kind of potentially falling for someone and for that person to also be falling for you. It was like, how can this be happening? And it felt like a miracle. It felt like a sliding doors moment of, we found each other just in the nick of time, because if I'd already had that recurrence when we'd met, then surely any sensible person would say, well, sorry, you're lovely, I wish you well, but I'm not going to get involved with you. That's what I believed. And I don't think that's the case now. I really don't. I think, and I'm really passionate about talking about relationships as someone living with a chronic condition, whatever that might be, that actually that doesn't mean that love isn't there for you. We just have to start telling a different story. And that's where I feel at the moment in this phase of my life, I think, that is something I feel so strongly about, rather than think, well, no, that's not for me now, that door's shut. No, we've all got stuff. And the older we get, like you say, everyone's got something that they're managing and dealing with. And that doesn't make us unlovable but anyway, a long-winded answer. I got married. It was a wonderful marriage in lots of ways. There were external challenges that eventually led to us separating, and we're divorced.
How quickly did you tell him that you had cancer?
Well, he knew I was having tests when we were communicating, and then I had to tell him on the day I'd found out, and I was very much kind of, I've had some news. I can't believe I'm having to say this, but my cancer's back. You're lovely. I really understand if you don't, And he was like, no, I want to see you. So we met, and he was
proof that there are lovely men out there.
He was wonderful at that time. It started off in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
And life sadly doesn't always end in that way, or relationships don't. But there's a lot of I will always acknowledge the way things were at the beginning.
Yeah. Can we rewind a bit? Because when you got your cancer, you met the amazing Deborah James, who people will remember back in 2017. And you've talked about your friendship in the past, and you said that she inspired you to change the way you felt about your diagnosis. Can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So I met Deborah. So obviously I was much further into my cancer experience. It was about 2017. And at that point, I've spoken very openly about this. I've struggled hugely with the emotional and mental aspect of the diagnosis. So I've had long periods of remission. I'm currently in one. When I was first diagnosed in 2010, the most crippling part for me was the emotional recovery. And I spent many, many years living in a highly sort of permanent state of fear and almost paralysis and catastrophic. I found it very difficult to be present and accept my wellness. And it was a result of, I guess, gradually kind of finding an online community and then connecting with other amazing women, particularly Deborah. And I think for those who didn't know her but viewed her and fell in love with her like so many of us did, as we know, she had an incredible life force and spirit. And alongside some less well-known, amazing women in my life, I just began to sort of view the way someone with a very challenging prognosis, as she had from the beginning, the way she embraced life, the way she seized every moment, the way she, despite, living with the fear and the knowledge and the physical and emotional aspects of it, she still had this incredible capacity to embrace life and say yes to things and kind of throw her head back and laugh and be spontaneous and a bit wild. And that wasn't my natural way. And so I think it just seeped in slowly over the course of knowing her, our friendship, sitting side by side in the chemo ward. And I've said this so many times, but you couldn't kind of be around that energy and not almost start to absorb it yourself and think, oh, maybe I can find more joy, let myself find some joy. And how do I turn down this fear dial that I've allowed to run riot, this dial of thoughts of doom? And that's what I think I've slowly but surely learnt to do myself, and as a result of finding this incredible community. And Deborah was obviously
part of that.
Yeah.
Do you think she taught you to live with, to believe that you were living with, not dying from?
Absolutely. And I've never felt that I was dying from, because I've been very fortunate that my prognosis, even though I've been told 3 times I've got cancer, there was always a plan, and there was always a strong plan and treatment that has worked. But obviously that doesn't stop you thinking, well, cancer equals a premature death. And as a mum, and as a kind of, and certainly with a secondary diagnosis, in my mind, that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
But I spent many years on paper doing really, really well. But I wasn't living as though I was doing well. I was living as though I was dying. Whereas someone like Deborah, who was in a much more sort of scary place physically, it always felt that she was living fully.
Yeah.
And I think, but
Yeah.
I'm okay. You know,
Yeah.
I'm in remission. Why can't I access that? Why can't? And I think that's what I've become so determined to do, and now feels like a natural part of me. And maybe I would have got there on my own, but I think, yeah, the influence of the amazing people that I've connected with is.
So she died in 2022, but a year, and you'd known her for 5 years by then.
When Deborah was coming to the end of her life, when she was dying, and there was an enormous amount of coverage. You know, she'd been made a dame. She'd set up the Bell Babe Fund. So I think everybody, whether you knew her or not, you know, her face was in all the papers and on the news. And obviously, as a friend and someone in that community, I was watching and weeping. But I remember one day the kids came in. I think all the three of the younger ones were there, and her face was on the news, and obviously at that end stage, looking, you know, very thin and close to the end. But one of the boys said, "Oh, it's your friend Deborah." I said, "Yeah, that's Deborah." And obviously her appearance was, you know, not the healthy Deborah that they'd met once or twice a few years earlier. And Theo, whichever child it was, said, is she going to die? And I said, yeah, she is. And they said, oh, I didn't think you died from cancer. And it was a real moment for me of kind of, God, wow, like, how do they, as these young people who've had a mum who's been ill, you know, was diagnosed when they were 6 months old, they've known nothing different, but they've also are very fortunate to have had a mum who's done really well and is here 15 years on. So therefore their perspective on the disease is very different to most people's. And I suppose it was a real moment that made me pause and think and almost feel like, gosh, should I be sitting them down and talking to them in a different way and really explaining it? But at the same time thinking, well, this is their experience. They know, and of course,
also, it's very positive, isn't it?
It was a
You
positive.
had children, four children that didn't get that people die from cancer.
And they didn't see me clearly in that category.
They see people survive cancer.
Yeah, and I think that's
positive.
Yeah, I think it is, and it was a real moment. And I remember seeing the kind of it registering on their faces as well. Yeah. You know, they were seeing this face that they knew, mum's friend on the telly, looking very poorly. I'm sitting there. Mum, you know, might have had chemo the day before, but in this incredible position. And it was like, oh, you could see almost like the cogs trying to kind of marry the two, you know, like, you know.
Yeah.
The priority of this phase of life, you know, having gone through, having being fortunate enough to be in long-term remission, still a cancer patient, but on a wonderful drug that's working for me. Kids growing up, challenges there with teenagers, but they're growing up, they're well, they're healthy. This phase of life for me is all about protecting that peace and really just being where my feet are and going, I'm you know, the feeling of good fortune at being as well as I am, and actually thinking, like, there's life for me now. There's a real life for me now. My kids are growing up.
Yeah.
I feel really excited. I really do feel genuinely excited about what might come. And that's a lovely feeling, and that's very overdue.
Yeah, well, really glad that is the case for you. And I would say it's not just about cancer, but when you get into your 50s, you know, there's been some painful moments in everyone's life. Would you say that helps build resilience, which is taking you to this positive place that you are now?
100%. I talk about resilience a lot, as many people do. And I don't think I really, you know, people would say, oh, you're so strong. How do you, you know, all those kind of lines. How do you, it's like, no, I just was surviving. Surviving. And I look back now and think, well, of course I was resilient. Resilience isn't necessarily it's not about leaping up off the ground like a road runner.
It's a little bit for you. You are a marathon runner, right?
I am a marathon runner. Yeah, exactly. But no, I think resilience grows in the messy times. It's not you know, we can be taken to our knees by life events and catastrophe and tragedy. But the very fact that we're just still breathing and we're still, and I do feel that I think life has moulded me in such a way that as much as I would love to have got to this point without all of those things happening, I do know that I'm very aware of saying things sensitively for people who are struggling much more than I am currently with their health. But I think actually the person I am now as a result of all of those hardships, I like her and I can see my strengths in a way that I never could. I know I'm a much stronger person. I know that I look at life so differently now, that my capacity for positive thoughts and optimism is so finely tuned, as opposed to being someone who kept themselves very small. I was I spent all of my 20s single. I was terrified of relationships. I had
Why?
ambition because I just always fell for unavailable men. So I didn't.
Did you like married men?
Not married. No. In your 20s, it was kind of like the guy with a girlfriend or the guy
Okay.
that just wasn't interested
With
in
the
me.
motorbike.
Yeah. So it wasn't that I was kind of, no, it wasn't that. It was more that I would get intense kind of feelings for unavailable men, I guess, whether they were unavailable just because they weren't interested in me. And I think that was a way of keeping myself safe. I've got a wonderful dad who's nearly 92, but very charismatic figure, and he had lots of affairs and relationships. Lovely dad, but probably not the best husband. And I think maybe he was quite a hard act to follow, or there was that, I guess, that childhood stuff of, I don't know what my examples of healthy relationships were.
Are your parents still together?
No, they haven't been together since I was like 10 or 11. So
Okay.
I didn't grow up with examples of healthy relationships, and I didn't have brothers. It was my sister and I went to an all-girls school. So boys and men were these kind of alien creatures.
Did you? Because I went to an all-girls school and I still do it to this day. And my daughter, who I sent to a mixed school, particularly for this reason,
Yeah.
I fancy them or I don't fancy them. And she says, Mum, how old are you? Seriously, grow up. And I remember when she brought a boy back from her school, I went, oh, Rory. And she went, he's my friend, Mum. Just stop. But I think there is something about being educated only with girls, growing up only with girls.
My goodness, yeah.
That there is this, not that men are different creatures and you learn to be more grown up about that. I do actually have just male friends now. But for a very long time, I liked them or I didn't like them.
I didn't have male friends. I feel like, I had, one of my best friends is gay, so gay male best friend. And I didn't go to uni, so I didn't have that kind of sudden, I did a lot of
Neither
acting.
did I.
Yeah, so I think that's why I was a very late developer, so in my 20s I was acting a little bit, doing lots of theatre, and so I was in these lovely environments, but I was scared to communicate. I had very little confidence. I was very, very shy. And again, I've made a real kind of conscious decision in recent years to think I want more men in my life in general.
You said that your blackest day was back in 2019 when you were diagnosed for the third time with cancer. It was in your breast, which meant
The
you
other
had
breast,
to have a double mastectomy.
Second mastectomy,
Second mastectomy, and in your lung. And how did you deal with that? I mean, understandably, pure terror, I would imagine, for the third time. But also long-term survival, right?
Yeah, and actually, I would say that I think in terms of the cancer side of things, the darkest day was getting the secondary diagnosis, because that, the years earlier, because that to me was like, well, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
When it came back again in 2019, bringing Deborah back into the conversation, I knew I was waiting for the call to confirm that it was cancer. I pretty much knew that was what I was going to hear. And I remember my oncologist ringing me up and telling me, and me saying, at that point she said, and it's in your lung and your left breast. And I remember saying, am I going to be here in 5 years? And she said, yes. Her words were, at least, which, whether she should have, that was that, in that moment I was like, okay, because you can't, that feels like such a long, yeah. And then I remember immediately messaging Debs, and she rang me back, and that was where I really, really embedded in me her mindset. And she said, the first thing she said was, you've got options, right? I can remember her saying it as in, and I was like, well, yeah. And that was how she was living. It's like, as long as there's an option, as long as I can keep, as she used to call it, sort of keep kicking that can down the road. And I think the hardest thing for a cancer patient is obviously when your lines of treatment are coming to an end. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm very, very fortunate. I've not been in that position. So that I remember, I can picture where I was standing and her saying that, right, you've got a plan. There's a plan. It's going to be okay. And I think I dealt with that third diagnosis actually really well. And that was the year that I started running.
Yes, because that's...
Yeah, and that was an incredible turn of events that I got this diagnosis at the beginning of the year, knew that I was going to have 2 very big operations. You know, I knew it was going to be a very big year. But then by another sort of chance encounter, I became friends with Bryony Gordon, who does a lot of running, journalist. We got to know each other, and she was like, let's go for a run. It was like, what? I'm on new chemo. Why would anyone go start running? But I did, and it became the most incredible anchor during that time. And it was never about the speed. It was, it was never about personal bests. It was like, my body's working for me in a really, it was so healthy. It was so it was very much mental health, emotional running, and just getting out. And it made me connect with my body in a different way. It made me minimise the impact that I was imagining the cancer might be having. You know, it's that feeling of, God, I've just been for a 5K run. My arms aren't cancer, my legs aren't cancer, my heart isn't cancer. Whatever's going on, there's so much of me that isn't the disease. And on a medical point of view, you could say, well, that might not be true because those rogue cells, you don't know where they are. But the way I very simply framed it was, there's so much of me that isn't cancer. And it was the running that really clarified that for me.
Your son said to you, you've got to live like it's not there, Mum.
That was a life change. That was on that very same day. I'd spoken to Deborah. My husband at the time had come home from work early. My father and his wife, everyone, those core people had kind of dropped everything and come to the house. Jake got home from school early. He was 15. And he just could immediately, he walked in and could sense that, we were all looking ashen. And then I just took him for a walk. I said, all right, let's just go for a walk. Live on near the common, went to the cafe, got him a hot chocolate. He's very quiet. He was a very quiet boy then. And I was kind of just trying to reassure him. I was being very practical in one hand, but also saying, it's going to be okay, but this is what's coming up over the next few months. And I think I was probably a bit wobbly-mouthed at certain points. Didn't really say a word. And as we were walking back towards the gates of the common, towards home, he said, Mum, you've just got to live like it's not there. And it really was a stop me in my tracks kind of moment. It really was, because it felt like that hasn't come from this young boy it felt almost like the universe.
Yeah.
It really did stop me. And it was from that moment,
message.
It really was. It was a life-changing moment of my belief that we've all got we've all got something that's got the potential to steal the joy and to stop us living the lives that we could be living. And my happened to be cancer. But
I do love that, actually. We've all got an it.
We've all got an it, and I really
Something
feel
that
like
stops us being up ourselves.
change, so whatever that, for someone else it will be grief, depression, mental health struggles, another kind of illness, something that, what is our it? And for me, it was the beginning of, again, alongside the community, alongside amazing people like Deborah, and my own, you can't spend years and years and years with a disease or living with a disease and not, you don't realise you're building an emotional toolbox. I guess this was another big part of me gathering my own coping mechanisms. And that when Jake rolls his eyes, because I go, Jake, it was genuinely, without sounding like I'm trying to make something bigger than it was a pivotal moment of it. It's the kind of words that you want to get tattooed somewhere. But actually, I think the relationship side of things has been the one area where, God, why can't I access that confidence in relationships? Why can't I be the me that I have become in other areas where I can go, do you know what?
I can run a marathon.
Yeah, or I can stand in front of a few hundred people and really speak my truth and feel good about myself. And it comes to affairs of the heart. And suddenly I'm that 22-year-old who's kind of, not leaving the house for 10 days in case the phone rings and I miss a call, how we used to do.
Yeah. Oh,
or
totally.
Just being terrified of rejection and not being good enough, or feeling the self-doubt and and again, so that's my kind of, right, Emma, time to let her go as well.
I think, Miss Emma, yes, it is time to let her go. But I would say to you that that is not peculiar to your situation with the
No.
cancer. That is peculiar to
I
anyone
know.
who has been hurt in a
Yeah.
relationship, because it makes you you question your own
Yeah.
judgment. You question, you have to accept, I believe, some responsibility, even if you can't see it coming at the time, for what's happened.
100%, yeah.
And it's just part of, growing up, really,
I
for
know.
want of a better word, even if we don't really grow up till our 50s. And I think for me personally, and I hope for you, I don't believe that I know I'm older, etc., and I know I've got it wrong multiple times, that I can't be happy with someone else, and that I still hope that I might be. And I don't see why that would be any different to you. Would you be open to dating apps or etc.?
I've been dabbling in the dreaded apps. Dabbling. I
Like a little dabble.
like, in the so I think of marriage ending 3 years ago. I did reconnect with someone at the end of 2023. I'd gone on the apps and just literally, I think, and it's funny when we say it all it felt so terrifying. And I think you touched on that when we were having a chat. And I know I'm not alone with that feeling of, it's all just so frightening and terrifying, and it shouldn't be. Just have fun with it. But it's like,
When we were young,
Yeah.
it wasn't.
It wasn't a
didn't
thing. And
exist.
yeah.
Wipey diaper.
I know.
Honestly, I was ridiculous at it.
Yeah, terrible. And so I did reconnect with someone that I dated very briefly before I met my ex-husband and before my cancer came back. And that was a brief dating situation, but there was no drama around it. And when it ended, I was a bit sad. But so 18 months ago, whenever it was, I just thought, maybe we could go for a coffee, because that wasn't a big drama, and it would be good. I just would like to go for a coffee with someone.
Yeah.
Setting myself those almost kind of let me end this year. This is another difficult year, but a year of some kind of closure. Let me end this year by just going for a lovely. Wouldn't that be nice? That was my very small goal. It wasn't about.
Yeah.
And we reconnected, and we ended up seeing each other for a while. It was such a big thing for me to see someone again. It was enormous. And it felt like such a huge step to take. So when it ended in the way it did, and it wasn't the most sensitive ending, and it stirred up. I plummeted into a really dark place for a few months. It just set me back dramatically, and it felt like another. Even though it wasn't a major relationship, it felt like a major relationship because it was the first relationship.
Yeah.
And I had let myself kind of really begin to fall for this person. And I found the end of that devastating, because it just all merged into one horrible, heartbroken mess. And then, did a little bit of, went on a few really what I find kind of staggering is you find yourself, the few dates I've been on, the couple I'm thinking of last year, they are funny stories to tell when you get through. At the time, you think, what the hell? What is this? And then they do become
dinner
funny.
party conversation, because honestly, I must have been on about 11 internet dates. Just some extraordinary stories. Not that these people were good or bad.
No, but just like, who are these people?
Really.
And do you have that thing of like, not that they're probably not even in my WhatsApp, but they have a name. They then develop a name amongst your girlfriends. It's like, are you talking about Satsuma Steve? Is what I would refer to as one particular person who
like oranges.
Just sat
fake tan.
Just brought out a couple of Satsumas, which was a lovely offering. As we sat shivering,
he just came round.
Well, he had a flask of tea.
No, we met for a second. No flowers.
We met for a second date, and he suggested we go for a walk. We sat on a bench, and it was late summer. It was October, and I was freezing. And okay, but it was the weird thing of I was clearly shivering. He talked about himself without pausing for breath for about an hour and a half, so I could feel the shutters come down in me, because I just thought, can you not see that I'm like shivering here? And then he brought out a flask of tea, and 2 Satsumas.
So you met on a bench?
Yeah, it was
got a
a
two
flask of
Satsumas?
tea.
I don't think I'd have been there an hour and a half.
No,
to
and so then I was,
Trevor.
so he forever became, I don't think he'll listen to this, I highly doubt it. He'll forever be known as Satsuma Steve. I feel, yeah, just...
I think as humans, I can see the smile on your face now. It is, even if it just passes the night. I have had several evenings with very nice guys that I don't want to see again, but it was a nice enough conversation for an hour and a half or what have you, and then just go. And sometimes that's enough. You don't need to go again for 3 weeks.
I think, yeah, and I think that feeling now, and again, I know I'm not alone with this, is that you get through those darkest days of heartbreak, which is like, it's like nothing else, that pain to me. I mean, you go through the physical discomfort, horrendous repercussions of illness, but I think that pain in the heart is another level. It kind of...
But has someone ever said to somebody like you, because my mother is a massive believer in this, when I split from the guy that I was very traumatized by, she said, pull yourself together, stress makes you ill. And for you, that's a very real
and
thing.
I remember being in a state of panic, so I wasn't ever told pull yourself together, because I think I would have just burst into tears and crumbled even more, and then they would have had to scoop me up even further. But it was, I remember panicking, and this is my, I wouldn't put this on that person, this was my response, but I remember being in a terrible state of panic, thinking I'm going to get ill, because my reaction was so, I was so distraught for much longer than I wish I had been. I didn't, it took me a long time to, I just broke. I just was a bit broken. And I remember feeling...
Were you good at hiding it from your kids?
No.
I was shocking.
I was shocking, and actually that's come up quite recently, and that's something I'm aware of. And I found it really hard. I found it really, really hard, because again, life didn't stop around the end of the marriage. I still had 3 kids who were 11. They just started secondary school. I was still having 3-weekly hospital treatment. I was still... And then, of course, all the hideous practical sides of divorce. I couldn't hide it. There was nowhere for me to go and lick my wounds,
I mean, you've already given so much good advice, but I would say what doesn't break you makes you stronger. And in your case, that there's been a lot that could have broken you. So what advice would you give to anyone who's had cancer, is worried about it coming back, currently going through cancer, about dating and how to improve their self-esteem?
Do you know what? Again, I can answer that question now in a very different way to how I would have done, because I think for me it just felt like an impossible. So if you're listening to this, or I would say to that person, of course you're going to feel that maybe that's out of the question for you, and of course, because we're going to put that obstacle in the way, aren't we? It's hard enough without adding a potentially life-limiting disease into our profile. And where do you place it? Where do you bring it in? How do you identify it, introduce it? Actually, I would say the one thing I've realised, and if I could pass it on to someone who maybe is much more at the early stages of their cancer journey, is I really believed that it ruled love out for me. I really did. And I get it if you feel like that too, but it doesn't. And if you meet the right, and it was said to me, and you got rolled, it's like, yeah, if you meet the right person. But I actually do believe that now. I think if you connect with the right person, there's no one at this point in our lives that hasn't got something. That
I have this thing called the honesty box. So I'm going to bring it in, and it's questions. I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to answer them as well.
Oh, good.
Here we go. Miss Emma.
Miss Emma.
Limitless M.
Limitless M. Right. How important is it to you that your children approve of your partner? Well, that's interesting, because, again, depending on their age. So when I met my husband, they were 4, 5. He came in and he was...
They didn't question it?
No, and they were very excited to have this person, and, that it began in a lovely way. I haven't introduced them to anyone else, so they've never... And there's no judgment there, but I'm okay with that. Like I haven't, I was with their dad. That obviously ended many, many years ago. I was with their stepdad. That ended, and I thought I'd be introducing them to someone last year, and that didn't happen. And essentially now, as they're 15, it's down to my happiness. They're not going to have a stepdad again. They're not going to have. I wouldn't bring it. I would never live with. I don't.
Never
I would
say
never.
never.
Not never. I would. I don't plan to live with a partner in the home that I'm in with my kids. I just don't think that would be. Wouldn't be necessary. And
Do you want one more?
I
While
do.
we're
I
here?
yeah.
Go
I
for
do
it,
love
go
her.
for it.
This is fun. We all have changing bodies in our 50s. How do you keep your confidence up? As a woman, and as a woman in the world, I have a confidence now that I did not have 10 years ago, 15 years ago, in whatever that our primes are meant to be. And that is wonderful. And I have a confidence about me in life that I didn't have. And I know, I think, well, yeah, I enjoy wearing makeup. I get a lot of pleasure from the clothes I wear and the kind of dopamine dressing and the makeup in a way that I didn't years ago. That's all come to me quite late, and I really love it. So there's an element of confidence there. Intimately, I'm going to be I'm terrified. I mean, I could burst into tears now because it's a very up topic of me.
Okay.
No, I don't.
But
I don't
for
mind
you,
talking about
women
it.
in their 50s to take their clothes off for someone new is a big deal. So
I
for you,
think it's not even. Yeah, because it's funny because obviously I've got lots of scars. I've got wonky boobs, 2 mastectomies, scars all over the place. A port in my chest that sticks out, and that's fine. I mean, it's not even so much about the kind of scars of cancer. It's I think it's just I think when you're not someone who just has lots of flings, and when long periods of time go by and you're not intimate, and and then you're maybe still dealing with some brutal rejections. I've kind of interpreted the end of. I've decided, in some ways, I'm talking so openly, forgetting that there's going to be an audience, but the lingering damage of the big rejections has made me, kind of turn on myself a bit, lose confidence in myself in that intimate way. Not saying, I don't mean about being good in bed or not, but just feeling like that rejection, I found it really hard. And I guess I think I've got a lot of, that's where my healing is currently needing to take place. When it's been a long time since someone's said, God, you're gorgeous, and seen you, and you're spooning in bed, or they see you naked. That's been a long time for me now. I mean, in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm really revealing things. But I suppose if I think in a certain situation that happened, where I did let myself be vulnerable, it kind of wasn't the best outcome. So
I think as you get older, that's just hard.
Yeah, God, I've really,
to be honest,
shared openly, haven't I?
Yeah.
There?
I mean, I want to be just as honest. I mean, I've got into bed in my pajamas and not wanted to take them off. I don't know how I think that's going to work.
I know. And I think it's and I want to be that woman that would stride across from bed to bathroom, head held high. But
where's the towel?
And I'm shy. I'm very shy in that way. And then, but then I also think how lovely to feel so safe and comfortable with someone that I hope
that takes time.
I think that
even
takes
when
time.
You're young.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. So it's a funny old. Yeah, I do. I think you're absolutely right. But I think it's never been something that I've found that I've always been quite conscious and not the most confident. So this is a phase of like, I want to let that go, because I think, I'm trying to work on those aspects just on my own, like kind of, a bit more positive self-talk and believing that I'm lovable as I am. And
well, you are.
Whatever my breasts are like, that have no sensation, but there's still a feminine part of me. And it's kind of, as a cancer patient or a person who's gone through a lot of illness and physical trauma, I think it's very easy. Maybe this is what I should have started by saying, you disassociate from parts of your body. So, I don't, as a woman, and as a woman with, breasts with no nerve endings and sensitivity, but that's still a part of me
trait.
that I think, even if I still want to feel that's.
You want to feel attractive.
Yeah, I want to feel attractive and seen. as a
Yeah.
woman, and
Yeah.
as a woman who hasn't got a perfect, who's is in her 50s, who's had 4 kids, who's got scars, who's, still a cancer patient. But yeah, I hope I'm working on finding that's kind of how I.
Well, you look very attractive to me, Miss Emma.
Thank you.
That's all I'm going to say. What was the last romantic gift you received?
A Satsuma on a park bench. Felt on a cup of tea. I didn't
We have
want
to
either
work
of them.
on these men that
I
you're
know.
going for.
I was given.
Satsuma on a park.
I know. I was given
bench.
a Fitbit last year, and I remember at the time it was lovely. I was thrilled with it. And it felt romantic at the time, practical romantic. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been given anything more traditionally romantic. Fitbits and Satsumas. That's I might write a chapter in my book.
Yeah, I
actually.
think we're going to have to do better than that. I mean, the last
My
romantic...
bar's been quite low for quite a long time. I've just been told quite recently that my bar needs to be raised.
I'm just checking. Next time you get asked on a day, I'm just going to be vetting these for you, going, no, we're not going to a park bench.
No, I've had a
tell him
recent,
no.
much more positive experience. I'm very happy to say.
You're at least going to an outside bar with a blanket over you.
Yeah, no, I've experienced a rooftop bar recently, which was very lovely.
So I would actually, it was very lovely. The guy that I'm seeing at the moment is a brilliant artist, and he drew. It was a cartoon, which was very funny, but it was of the two of us, and he just sent it to me.
That's so lovely.
on my phone. So when I clicked on it, that was very lovely.
That's so lovely.
That was lovely.
Yeah.
That was,
and I can see your face, kind of.
yeah, because that's a
Your
very
smile.
personal
I
thing.
know.
I mean, you can buy someone flowers or
Yeah.
but that was, probably took him 5 minutes
But
because he's
it's-
very quick. But I mean, it was just a sweet sketch, and it made me laugh, and that was lovely.
But I love that as well, and it's that kind of love language thing as well of what's your love language, like where tokens of affection or words or words of affirmation. But I love that feeling in a relationship where you might be in the aisle of a supermarket, or you might be or you'll see something and think, oh, and it's something silly, and you think of that
Yes.
person,
Yes.
and only you would
Yes,
get
only
it.
they would get it. Yes.
And that's I love that where
Yeah.
you
We're going to work on the Satsumas. That's your plan for 2025.
Yeah.
By Christmas, you're going to be on a date where you've got a better gift than a Satsuma.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel quite confident about that.
Okay. So Emma Campbell, thank you so much for
It's
coming
been a
on Suddenly
joy.
Single.